Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our September Community Coffee Hour, where we're going to be discussing strategies for recruiting Black men as mentors. We have three stellar guest speakers with us today, and we'll be hearing more about them. They'll be introducing themselves so you can learn more about their background and kind of what brings them to this coffee hour this morning here just shortly. To get us started too, if you want to introduce yourself, we'd love to know who's in the room with us. If you could do your name, pronouns, your mentoring program that you're with, your role, any other information that you would like for us to know about you in the chat, that would be wonderful. If you are new to Mentor Virginia, welcome. So our mission is to foster quality mentoring relationships that empower, elevate, and encourage young people. We do that through a variety of different ways. We provide training to mentors, to young people, to program staff. We have an AmeriCorps Vista program. We have no-cost consulting called Technical Assistance. And then we also have a National Quality Mentoring System program that allows mentoring programs to kind of do a self-assessment process and see how well they're doing in alignment with national best practice standards. So we also do events like this that are kind of aimed at professional development and really spurring conversations that kind of move the field forward. That is who we are. Here is our staff. Hopefully you've seen some of these faces before. We have a new face with us on the screen as well, and I believe she's here in the meeting. Emma Rush is our new marketing communications coordinator, serving through our AmeriCorps Vista program. So we're so excited to have her on board and to welcome her this morning. We also have Denise Helms with us. She'll be introducing herself shortly, but she is our training and DEI manager, and she'll be helping us with the conversation today. We also have an incredible team of consultants. Hopefully some of you have met some of these amazing folks that we have on the team as well. They provide training services. They also provide consulting and help with the National Quality Mentoring System. So they are all greatly valued for their expertise that they bring to our team. So again, today's topic, strategies for recruiting Black men as mentors. And kind of preparing for this, just reflecting on what brought you to this meeting. You know, what are you hoping to gain or talk about? I think there's a typo on the slide. So what questions do you have about this topic in particular, recruiting Black men as mentors? We encourage you to use the chat box throughout the session. There will be a Q&A a little bit later on, but if you have any questions kind of during the main panel discussion, please do put those in the chat and we'll keep track and make sure that those questions get asked. So, and with that, I am going to actually start us off with a poll. We haven't done this in a little while, but we are going to launch with a poll this morning. So hopefully you're seeing that on your screen right now. So we want to just kind of get a sense of where folks are at with recruiting Black men as mentors. So how successful has your program recently been with this? So we have a few different options here: very successful, successful, a little successful, or unsuccessful. And these are anonymous. We won't be able to, tie this data back to you in any way, but we just kind of want to know where folks are at in the room and just get a sense. So we'll give folks a few seconds to fill that out. Just a couple more seconds. I think most people have completed it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end and then share these results. So hopefully you're seeing the shared results here. It looks like for the most part, 52%, so over half are saying a little successful, that we're making progress, but still have a long way to go with being successful in recruiting Black male mentors. 5%, looks like only one person saying very successful, 33% successful, and 2 or 10% of folks here are saying unsuccessful and in need of some immediate support on this topic. So again, we just wanted to kind of get a sense of where folks are at before we launch in. And so I'm actually going to pass things over to Denise Helms now, who will introduce herself and then kind of get us started with the conversation.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Hour for September. Very excited about today's topic. I'm going to introduce our guest speakers, Ryan Bell, Rob Gray, and JT Hasty. Again, I'm Denise Helms, and I work as the Training and DEI Manager for Mentor Virginia. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm excited to be here. And I'm going to go in order. So Robert, could you go ahead and introduce yourself, then JT, and then Ryan, and we'll jump into our questions for today.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm Rob Gray, Executive Director and co-founder of the Uhuru Foundation. Our organization works with moderate to high-risk youth who provide credible messenger mentoring, financial literacy training, workforce development training as well. And we primarily go inside of detention centers, alternative schools. We also work with the adult population, the high-risk adult population, providing violence intervention, as well as credible messenger mentoring to that population as well, doing reentry work. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. JT.
Good morning. My name is JT Hasty. I am a commercial lines risk advisor with TowneBank. Inside of my capacity at the bank, I am responsible for our emerging leaders networking group. Within that group, I am responsible for grouping our African American or emerging leaders and help grow in a professional manner. Climate. In addition, I have a lot of times in the African American community, are in the jail or worse, and it affects the community in so many ways. So the goal is we would provide different resources, will avoid that, still step into children's lives as well.
And everybody, and the head of school at the Academy at Bell, we primarily from under-resourced communities and neighborhoods here in the Roanoke Valley. And JT, we need to connect at some point in time as well, because I'm also the founder and board chair of the Black Father Family Initiative, which focuses on equipping, empowering fathers in the space of their families and ensuring that they are the best fathers they can be for the families and the family units that they're a part of. And so happy and excited to be here with you guys today. And thank you to Denise and Sarah and Mentor Virginia for the invitation.
Thank you all. This is going to be so exciting. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I've had an opportunity to connect with you. Exciting. So the first question I have is just how important is it for Black youth, Black male youth in particular, to be mentored by Black men? In your opinion and in your work, how important is that framework in terms of Black male mentoring?
Are we going in any particular order or just kind of?
Go ahead and just jump in.
Okay, well, one, I mean, just the simplest way to answer it is it's very important. I truly believe there's a cultural connection when a Black male can mentor a Black child. I'm not taking anything away from any other race or anything of that connection, but there's a certain struggles that we as Black men face daily. And our counterparts simply, they just don't go through those same struggles. So when it comes to mentoring, I just believe that mentoring should have a strong foundation with the mentor connecting with the mentee. So connection, I believe, is at the foundation of mentoring. So when we look at the Black male youth, who will they connect with the most? Somebody that looks like them. So, you know, again, long story short, I just think it's very important.
Yeah, I would have to concur. I had a mentor of mine put it to me this way when I asked him the question, how important is it for Black men to be in the space of mentoring? And he framed it to me as it's a matter of life and death, right? There are certain, as JT just mentioned, certain intrinsic qualities, characteristics, and experiences that you may not even necessarily have to speak, that you just understand, that are just a part of who you are, a part of your makeup. And this is a part of the conversation around mentoring that we don't necessarily talk about a lot in the space of exploring your roots, exploring your heritage, exploring where you come from, exploring all of what makes you who you are. And when we're developing these programs and putting these people in position to be with these young people, those are some of the things that you can't teach that, right? It's like basketball. You couldn't teach Allen Iverson to be quick. He was just quick. You couldn't teach Michael Jordan to jump high. He could just do that, right? You can't teach a Black boy to be a Black boy with some of those intrinsic qualities that a Black man would be able to instill in them. They're just there. And so I would say it's a matter of life and death.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of Ryan, it's a matter of life and death. So I run a program that uses the credible messenger model, and that's basically using mentors with shared or lived experience. So 85% of my staff are formerly incarcerated, and that just works for the population that I'm dealing with, that moderate to high risk population. We go inside of detention centers. The first thing the kids want to know is, what have you been through, right? If you haven't been through this, why should I listen to you? And so in our logic model, we use the first component of our logic model is that relationship building. And in order to create the mentality shift, you need to have a strong relationship with a lot of the youth, and having that shared experience, coming from the same background, same type of family structure. And a lot of times, being a credible messenger doesn't even mean you've been incarcerated. It just means that you have that shared experience. You can relate to that youth at on a high level to create that mentality shift. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's very imperative. And then, statistically speaking, a lot of the kids we work with come from single. So element and representation.
Piggyback off of something that Brother Robert just said. And I think it was very key and very important when you said shared every single program, right? And so what Brother Robert just shared is very key. Just because you're a Black man doesn't mean you're going to be good for that Black child. You have to find the Black man who has that experience, right? Who maybe is the one who has been incarcerated or has had a parent who's incarcerated, right? If you come ask me to mentor a young man whose parents have been incarcerated or maybe has been on drugs, I can't relate to that. That wasn't my experience. So at some point in time, even though I'm Black, even though I'm a man, we're going to have a disconnect at some point. And so I think even when we're recruiting these Black men to be in these programs, what you said is key, Brother Robert. We have to not only pay attention to recruiting Black men to be in the programs, but what have you been through? What are your experiences? What life challenges have you overcome as we pair you with those people? I'm a child of divorced parents. You can pair me with experience, I think, is with the mentor and the mentee can be as fruitful as possible.
And I just want to add to that, having a variety of mentors is so important. A variety of my staff, so my co-founder and I, we both come from the same exact neighborhood. He ended up, incarcerated. I ended up a college graduate. We came back together, started our organization. It's kids that we bump into, or kids that we mentor that might gravitate, to him more. It's kids that might gravitate towards me more, just based off of our experiences. So, having a variety of mentors is key. So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Thank you both for that. So while we're on that topic of a variety of mentors and things like that, JT, I'm going to start with you. When it comes to the corporate world, when it comes to recruiting mentors, what kinds of things do you feel are barriers in terms of recruiting Black men in particular to be mentors? Have you noticed things kind of in your world of work, in the corporate world? And then I'm going to have Ryan and Robert jump in and answer that one too. What are the barriers in terms of recruiting Black male mentors that you've seen? And we've got a lot of programs that consistently report having an issue with that in terms of recruiting. So I'd love for you to speak with that. And I'm going to kick it to JT first.
Well, I think a lot of times, like we just talked about, is relating, right? Relating to the people that we're supposed to be mentoring. So in the corporate world, a lot of times I think image is number one. So in the corporate world, I'm required to wear a suit and tie, right? So when we're talking to the youth about, I could do a lot of career fairs, and a lot of them are at HBCUs. So they see somebody who, suit and tie, and they look and they just automatically, they get turned off. That's not me. That's not what I want to do. They come from these under-resourced neighborhoods. So they haven't seen that trajectory or that path. So I think a lot of times when we're talking about recruiting Black mentors, it goes back to me. I'm always going to say the foundation is connecting and relating to who we're talking to. Right. So I'm just going to go back just a little bit and speak on what Robert and Ryan said. I don't come from a divorced parents. My parents have been happily married, just celebrated 42 years. Right. I don't come from an under-resourced neighborhood. The neighborhood was fine where I grew up. However, I've been through things in life. Right. So it's all about still connecting to those youth or those mentees that you want to connect with. And I would say, again, I think the barrier for that, especially in the corporate world, is image. A lot of times we say the first impression is a lasting impression. I think we should start to think of how we can change that, because the first impression may be a bad impression. However, if you connect that mentee with the right mentor, we can change that, right? We can change. I can show you how to dress better, how to dress for the occasion, and how to dress down, things of that nature. So when you say barriers, to me, it's always going to be first impression and image is what I go through in the corporate world.
Thank you for that, Robert or Ryan.
Yeah, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with the image piece, the professional development. I was going through a training with one of my mentors, and he was explaining to me how, with this credible messenger concept, he said that, he had brought on a guy who was phenomenal. He had the mentoring piece on lock. Like, he was a great mentor, but he said he was his greatest HR headache. And so just professional development. I know, speaking from, for me personally, I've never seen my parents do blue collar work. And so when I transitioned into the professional space, it was tough for me. Some days I might wake up and go to work, and, my head might not be combed all the way. I might show up with some Jordans on and, some tattoos. And, some people might look at me and say, that's not professional, right? But then again, I'm able to connect with the youth at a really high level. And so it's like, well, the proof is in the pudding. Like, the work is being done at a high level, but you're more concerned about, my image and, how I speak and how I dress. So it's kind of like, what's most important? So I feel like it's a cultural barrier that exists within, it's the culture of a lot of these organizations where, individuals come in and they don't feel comfortable being themselves. They don't feel comfortable being their authentic selves. And then at the same time, when you think about that, what kind of message are you sending off to the youth that you're mentoring as well? Are you telling them they have to look and speak a certain way in order to, be productive and professional, or be deemed productive and professional in the workspace?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with both of those statements. And then I'll add there that what I feel, or what I've seen, and I'll speak more specifically here for my area, as one of the largest barriers is shifting our perception around what we define a role model to be, right? And I'll explain through a quick story. There was an organization here that came. I went to a meeting they had, and they told me that 100% of their kids who were part of their program avoided the juvenile and domestic relations court system, right? 100% of the kids. Then they followed that up and said they had a young man who was in the program who they had to put out of the program because his mother specifically wanted him to have a Black man as his mentor, and they had 0 Black men in their pipeline to be mentors. So I immediately was like, hold on now, this is a young man who was in this program that you're telling me you almost have a 100% guarantee rate that while he's with you, he will stay out of trouble. And the reason why he is no longer in this program, because his mother, rightfully so, wanted him to have a Black male mentor, and there is none in the program. So I go sit down and I go meet with the individuals at the program. And the first thing I notice when I'm sitting around the table is everybody's white and everybody's a woman. How are you then going to relate to the Black men that you want to recruit to come be a part of your program, number one? And what is your definition of what a role model or a mentor is to be? And then two, and most importantly, they asked me to then help them find some men. I told them, I got a bunch of Black men ready and willing to do whatever we ask them to do. So this fact that you can't find Black men is baffling to me, because they're here, they're ready to go. I bring about maybe 25, 30 men out to this meeting. We do a breakfast, the whole 9 yards. We go through the whole spiel. Everybody's excited, revved up, ready to go to be mentors in this program. We get to the end of the program, and what do they tell us? If you have a felony conviction, you cannot be a mentor in the program. 85, 90% of the men I brought with me, who I brought on purpose because they had the shared experiences of the kids they told me were in the program. 85, 90% of the men I brought with me immediately because of that were disqualified to be mentors. Right after that, a gentleman who runs a minor semi-professional basketball team here, who brought a bunch of his players over, said to me, Ryan, we are going to run out of the quote unquote good people, the people who don't have a record, the people who got on a shirt and tie, the people, like Brother Robert said, comb their hair and come in here and straighten, whatever it is that you are, is quote unquote good people. We're going to run out of them. Those individuals are tapped out. They're mentoring in 25 other programs because you won't let the people who have the shared experiences into your program because of policies and procedures. So that's what I would say is the biggest barrier to me right now, is our perception of what a good person is. And that then doesn't allow for us to allow for those people to become a part of these programs. And last thing, people tell me all the time that they're interested in Black men coming into the space. Now I'm in education, right? I'm in education, and folks tell me all the time how much we need more Black men in the space of education. And I ask them every single time, how are you going to react when that Black man shows up and he does something that you do not feel should have been done in the manner that he did it, in the tone in which he said it, in the presence in which he exhibited the correction? Do you then allow for that Black man to be in that space as authentically as he needs to be in order for some real change to happen? Because I can come over to your organization all day long and talk to your kids all nice and sweet and cuddly and be the uncle that you want me to be, or I can come in there and get real with it and be on their level and give them what they need, what we as Black men know they need, what the Black men who've been through those experiences know they need. But the first thing you'll do is you'll chastise us. You will make the situation uncomfortable. And so those are I think are the biggest barriers, is not allowing people to be authentic when they're there. And what is your perception of what a good person or a good role model is?
That's great. I've got a couple of questions off of that. But so what I hear you all saying is that a lot of times it's important for the programs themselves to examine their culture, their practices, their policies and procedures to determine how to make a hospitable space for these mentors. But I do want to go back, Robert, and talk a little bit about Credible Messengers. I think it's a fascinating program. Could you speak a little bit into the Credible Messenger program and what that looks like?
Yeah, so the Credible Messenger concept started in New York with the probation department, juvenile probation department in New York. They created the concept of Credible Messenger, where they identify individuals with a shared or lived experience. 85% of the time, the mentors that were mentoring a lot of the young folks in the justice system with this Credible Messenger concept were formerly incarcerated. They go through what's called a street background check. And that just means, they'll take the Credible Messenger out into the neighborhood. The organization will take the Credible Messenger out into the neighborhood in which they come from and get the people's, ask the people in that neighborhood about this individual to see what, the quality of person this individual is. And then they come in and then they go through a formal mentoring training. So it's just the identity of, the whole concept of a diamond in the rough. So going, inside these communities, finding the diamonds in these communities, cleaning them up, polishing them up, and giving them the resources they need in order to do mentoring at a high level. These are individuals who are excluded from mentoring for the most part. And so, like I said, I have about 7 individuals who are formerly incarcerated on my staff. We've been able to, I know at one alternative school we went in, the attendance rate was at 35%. it improved the attendance rate. It jumped from 35% to 70% on the days we ran our programs. And so, just being able to connect with the youth at a high level with these shared and lived experiences, again, it's astronomical. It's breathtaking.
That's great. Ryan or JT, do you want to speak into that at all?
Well, I'm not too familiar with the Credible Messenger program, but I think Robbie did a great job of explaining it. It goes back to, like everybody has said, it's finding that foundation. So if you're able to take somebody who has been incarcerated and who turned their life around and then go back into that same neighborhood and mentor the youth, there again, we're building that foundation, we're building that connection. So again, I'm not very familiar with the Credible Messenger program, but I think Rob did a great job of explaining it.
Yeah, same here. I'm not too familiar, but based on Brother Robert's explanation, again, it's all about that shared experience and finding that common ground, right? And that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
And we keep saying, I think one thing that I will mention though is we keep using that term, a good person. And I just want, to me, that can be a felon. And I think, again, that's so much of a barrier. I mean, you see that F on somebody's word and you automatically turn them away. That person could be the saving of millions of lives. And just because you see that stain on the record, that's not you can't just turn that person away. And it seems like what the Credible Messenger program will do is take that same person and mold them into somebody who can then mentor. So it's something that I just from this conversation, I want to know more about it because I think that's what we need as mentors and our youth need it as well.
This is great, especially as we think about critical mentoring and having culturally relevant practice, having a critical consciousness as we think about our mentoring programs. I'm thinking about maybe opening it up a little bit early because you guys have said some really, really great things. So I'd love to go ahead and open it up for Q&A at this point, if everyone is okay with that. And if you have questions, go ahead and either put them in the chat and Sarah and I will facilitate that way. But I think for me, my last question is, as I think about hospitality and retaining mentors, I know that there is, as we've been working with programs, there's a large issue with keeping mentors on our team. Are there ways that you all can speak to things that you've been involved in? Now, clearly, all three of you have given yourselves to, social help, helping society with what you do. So what are the things that you've experienced in your experiences with either nonprofits or in the corporate world where you're doing emerging leaders? What are the things that have kept you in that space? What kinds of roads or doors were opened up for you or spaces were created for you to keep you in this work? And then we'll open it up for Q&A.
So I'll jump in. I'm gonna say something that may be a little controversial, right? I'm of the mindset if they leave, let them leave. If they leave, let them leave. Because this is going to be a thankless work a lot of times. This is going to be a work that does not provide a lot of financial incentive to be there. Even though, my second point, I think that we need to find every avenue that we can to honor and respect your time financially, if that's a possibility, right? And if you are at the point to where the program is doing everything that the program could possibly do, you're paired with your mentor, they're providing the resources, and you walk away from that, we have to understand that not everybody's cut out, like everybody's not cut out to be an entrepreneur, everybody's not cut out to be a mentor. And so I'm of the mindset that I'll have a conversation with somebody when they walk away just to ask why. And then depending on what that answer is, I don't then try to figure out how to get you to come back. I find the next person, because there's somebody out there who just wants to do that, who is looking for the next person. And that's honestly what has kept me. I can sit here and try to run through a whole bunch of different things as to why I stayed in mentoring programs that I'm in. And the reality of the matter is, it's just something that is within me to do. I want to help the next generation. My dad was in the space of education, and so I saw him day in and day out as a principal, as a mentor to other kids, people, other individuals who were in my life. And so it's just something that I want to do, right? Like how they say, go find what you would do for free. and if you can figure out how to get paid for it, then that's the most beautiful thing you can do. Mentoring has to be something that you would do for free, something that you would do and not get thanked, something that you would do and nobody in the world may know that you have ever done it. I just talked to a teacher of over 30 years here in Roanoke City who shared with me how he would go out at night, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning to some of these households and go find kids who hadn't been in school, go find kids who were missing, go find kids whose families were looking for them, go find kids who were in gangs and run into the gang house and where the gangs congregated and take them out. What could I possibly say to that man to keep him doing that? Nothing other than he wants to be there. If he walked away from that, I would understand and would not try to force or manipulate or keep him in the program with some type of incentives or different things of that nature. You just have to have the people that you want. If they walk, let them walk.
That's a good point. I think I probably, that's good. And I have to start thinking that way as well, because I think I try to hold on a little too much because I think the work is just so important. But you're right. You know, when you get the mentor and you find out that they're just not a right fit, there has to be some way to just let that go. So in the corporate world, you know, in our jobs, we have exit interviews. When somebody leaves, whether, you know, they're fired or whether they resign, there's an exit interview. So I think one thing that we can do is have those exit interviews with the people or with the mentors and find out why. Get to the root of the problem, get to the root of why they don't think that the work is important enough for them to stay on, right? So that's number one. Number two is, again, going back to the corporate world, is the succession plan. In my job, they're working on succession plan. Our youth need a succession plan, right? And the mentors are the ones that step in and we help them and we guide them in that transition. So I think the work is important. Again, I don't think you should hold on to somebody who just does not want to do it because it's truly from the heart, right? It's really, it's time, it's stuff. Again, it's not financially rewarding, but it's your heart. If your heart is in it, you'll find a way to make it work. And having those people connected to you as your organization grows, as your nonprofit grow, it'll just make a better community for all of us. So those are my two takeaway points from that.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's inspecting what you expect. So creating, you know, expectations for that mentor, but then inspecting, making sure, you know, they feel equipped to be able to mentor at a high level. They have all the information they need. They have all the resources they need to connect this youth to, you know, or get this youth to stability or get this youth to be productive. So basically, you know, just the information, making sure they have the information. Also, I would say financial stability, making sure they have, you know, the adequate pay. Nobody likes to work for free. We're talking about Black men, you know, coming in, doing mentoring, like, you know, like they got to get paid. So I'm a firm believer of, you know, paying mentors at a high level. So yeah, the combination of those two things, just making sure they're equipped with the resources they need in order to do the work at a high level, and also make sure they're, you know, they're being paid adequately to mentor at a high level.
That's great. So I hear you saying, you know, obviously taking care of our mentors financially, developing a succession plan, doing exit interviews and collecting data to kind of inform the ways that we do our recruiting. And then at the end of the day, if they don't want to be there, if they want to leave, let them go. I think those are really good ways to kind of frame our programs in the ways that we think about recruiting Black male mentors. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. I did see a question from Priscilla who's asking about recruiting Black males. So when you are recruiting Black males as mentors, do they find you? Do you go out into the community and hold mentor fairs? What is the kind of the practicality of the ways in which you guys recruit your mentors?
For us, for my organization, it's been word of mouth. When, you know, individuals in the community, when parents in the community, stakeholders, when they hear about, you know, the great work that your organization is doing, they're going to talk about it. And a lot of times we get referrals directly from the community, from parents, from cousins, from aunties, that type of thing. But then we also have a formal process, you know, go on our website and, you know, request to be a mentor. If you're interested in mentoring some of the youth we work with. We have, that process. But I'd say word of mouth for the most part. And then like community events, like we do a lot of community events over like, I think we did over like 40 community events this past year where we're going out into the community, providing resources, different resources to the community. And then that gives the community a chance to connect with our mentors as well.
Yeah, community events are key. So a lot of our mentors come, again, by word of mouth or through events, especially with my father's organization. A lot of what we do in that space is geared towards the fathers in the group. And then from there, we'll just present opportunities to them, right? So we try to do as much as we can for them, as much as we can for the potential mentor, as much as we can to have space and opportunity for them to just gather, connect, fellowship, just get together and have a good time, right? And then while they're there doing that, we put out the opportunity or the clarion call, right? The rallying cry. Here's opportunities that we have to be for you to be involved in what we're doing, and then have options, right? So you got to have options for folks to be a part of, right? You may have the person who is going to be your mentor, who comes over to your school or to your place comes every week, comes once a week, right? But then you may have the guy who can only come once a month, or you have them for something specific in a specific area of what they do. So, have tiers to involvement. So then that way you offer the opportunity for everybody to be able to find their space where they can be involved at. And it doesn't put too much pressure on them either, to feel like, hey, I have to come over here and be involved once a week or 5 hours a week or whatever the case may be, right? Add some tiers in there for them.
That's great. So creating variety of involvement can kind of create more space. Are there any other questions?
Yes. So one of my questions, I heard everyone speak about shared experiences, and I think that's so significant and important. But given the lack of consistency to keeping and that continuity, you all talked about the sustainability of the meals. My wonder is, what might practitioners keep in mind when they think about how they're going to effectively serve those people in your spaces already?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say while you strive to try to find as many individuals who have those lived experiences or those shared experiences, there's also, and I think Brother JT mentioned this earlier, where he mentioned, he's not a child of divorced parents, doesn't have parents who were incarcerated, but he found ways to still be able to relate to what those experiences may be. And then there's another layer to this, where even though you have shared experiences, that should not be what the entire relationship is about, right? And so as practitioners are coming into these spaces, even if you're going to a space to where the young people in this space have these different experiences that you don't have, there's a certain trajectory of life you would like for them to go down. And so then you have to sit with yourself to figure out, how can I best serve them in my role as their mentor, based on the lived experiences that I have, based on the opportunities that I have been exposed to. How do I then incorporate that into this relationship that I have with this young person? So just because you don't have the shared experience or the lived experience doesn't mean that you can't be of assistance, you can't be helpful. Doesn't mean that you can't change that person's life, right? I speak really quickly, a real quick story. My wife, and she tells her story all the time, so I don't think she'll mind me telling her story, but my wife doesn't know where her father is. Mother was a prostitute, on drugs, ended up in foster care, beaten, abused, sexually assaulted, the whole 9 yards, right? Ended up with a white family who was her second grade teacher, who took her in and would take her home for dinner and different things of that nature. And without even knowing it, my wife speaks about it to this day, they just simply showed her that there was another way that life could be, right? And then they begin to just pour into her in that way. Hey, we don't know what it's like to be Black. We don't know what it's like to come from a mother who's a prostitute. They probably know what it's like to not know who their father was, all of these things, right? But what they did know is we know how we got to where we're at. And so we can then hopefully take that experience or take those tools and hopefully in some way give them to you in that space. Same thing with us as you're recruiting these Black men into your space. They may not have those experiences, but they have gotten somewhere. They have avoided some pitfalls. They have some successes that they can then relate to that relationship and experience.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we've got 2 questions. I'm gonna go with David, and then we'll follow that up with Nick.
Sounds great. Thanks, Denise. First of all, I just want to thank all 3 of you just for sharing your experiences, your expertise in this area. I've just been jotting down notes like crazy. So I actually work for the city of Alexandria. We're the only city in the United States that has a full-time coordinator for mentoring. So to provide government assistance, oversight for mentoring programs like you all that are doing the hard work. So love to have you all kind of speak to us and city council on some things we're working on. But more than anything, you all talked about policies that are barriers for Black men entering into the mentoring space. Can you talk about the experiences on combating some of those policies that maybe school districts may require for their background checks, or other entities that may require background checks in order to instill policies or remove policies that may be holding those individuals out of those spaces?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So, man, it's tough. It's tough. I'll just say that it's pretty tough. So we're actually working on our organization is working on a organizing campaign where we're basically trying to get credible messengers into the school system. And we're basically trying to create, getting these entities, getting the school system to basically create like a list of barrier crimes that prohibit these credible messengers from coming into the school system. So some of the more serious crimes, sex-related crimes, crimes against children, things like that, things of that nature. But then not some of like the nonviolent drug charges. Like if someone has clearly shown, a transformation and, has been living, positive, living a positive lifestyle for the past, 5 to 10 years, like there's no need to, hold that charge against them, especially we're saying, this is the Department of Corrections. Like, what are we actually correcting if you're still, you still have like this, what's the word I'm looking for? You still have this negative connotation attached to, these returning citizens. So we're actually creating a campaign where we're stigma. Yeah, we're actually creating a campaign where we are like trying to, get credible messengers into the school system and, having a clear list of crimes that prohibit these credible messengers from working inside of the school system. And then sometimes in detention centers as well. My partner, for example, Derek, there's been times where we haven't been able to go into certain schools or certain detention centers because of his background, because of his record. He has a possession charge on his record. But people love what you do, and they love the whole credible messenger concept. But then there's still pushback from individuals who might say, we don't want felons coming inside the school, or we don't want felons working around our youth. Just these different policies that are out there. So there's an open call to come on board and join some of our coalition meetings if you like anybody. We're currently in the state of Virginia looking to introduce a bill to be able to get credible messengers in some of these schools and centers.
And if you can't get those, just start your own.
Right.
Start your own. If you can't get in, there's a program here called Humble Hustle. Great mentoring program for those same reasons that Brother Robert just shared. Couldn't get the guys over to the school. They went and found a space in the community after school, in there. But sometimes large waters get
Well, I
broken.
think Rob's doing it the right way, so I'd love to know more about that, so we can connect after this. But I mean, I think you're doing it the right way as far as getting into those creating the bill, because they're being firm with those policies, especially in education. I see it from twofold. Like I said, I do commercial insurance, so a lot of that reasoning behind that is just the liability of having somebody come in with the record. So we have to show them that those nonviolent offenders are capable of changing and capable of teaching the youth. And the way you do that is the way that you're doing it, just like you said, by introducing those bills. So I'd love to know more about that.
Great. Wow, this is really, really good. Nick, go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, gentlemen, first and foremost, thank you so much. My name is Nick Williams. I'm the Assistant Director of Student Engagement over at VCU School of Business, as well as a professor of the Men of Color class at VCU and co-host of the Black Kings Connect podcast. So one, I got to get you on the podcast or into my classroom soon for sure. My question for you guys is, as many of us know, that there's often in spaces that are predominantly white, there's often, an irregular ratio of African-American male administrators, or even, mentor prospects compared to the African-American male students. What are some ways that, that schools, institutions, businesses, organizations can instill cultural competency, knowing that there is that deficit of Black male representation in a lot of these predominantly white spaces?
That's the one right there. I'm gonna let you go.
I should probably tell you I'm a doctoral student, so I should probably tell you that.
Man, that's the, so again, one, you have to, I like to frame things in stories, so I'll tell another story. I was working with a school, and there was a young lady there, beautiful sister, had an afro out, beautiful afro, doing a thing. Blackity black, doing a thing in the building, right? She was a counselor, amazing at what she did. In an administrative role in the school. Now the school was predominantly white teachers, most teachers were white. For whatever reason, they had some disconnect, it just wasn't what it should have been, and there was a lot of turmoil that was going on in the building. So they eventually I was in family and community engagement at the time. They brought us over to come have a conversation with the staff around how they were saying this counselor was showing up in the building. And they finally went around and around and around, and it was my opportunity to say something. And so I just simply asked the question, how serious are y'all about change? You clearly have people who are sitting here in this room who are flat out racist, straight up and down. It just is what it is. Now, I didn't have my job too much longer after that, but it was okay. And I think that we are going to continue to spin our wheels on trying to make spaces more culturally relevant, culturally competent, teaching people things that they just don't want to be taught. Now you have that's not to say everybody, because you have plenty of people out there in these spaces who want to be taught. So I think that's the first thing we have to do is challenge school districts, school systems, institutions, healthcare, whatever it may be, challenge these spaces to just quite frankly weed out and get rid of the individuals who are going to be impediments to progress, impediments to us moving in that particular direction, right? And then when you're in spaces, don't, for a lack of a better term, dim your light at all. Be who you are all the way, every day, every chance you get, you show up and you be Black, really Black as you can be in that space. That's the only way to then to allow individuals, and it makes me cringe when I even have to say this, to become comfortable with who you are and who we are and who these kids need. And there's a lot more I could say on it, but I'll stop there.
Well, you said something that's key. I think just being your true authentic self is really needed. My wife, she was a site director. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Communities in Schools, but they're a nonprofit. They go into schools, but they primarily are in impoverished areas. So she was placed in an environment where that did not happen, or she didn't have to face that. Me on the other end, I primarily work with white people, right? So one time, and I'm sure a lot of your organizations had this as well, but when George Floyd, when that happened, everyone created DEI, right? So it was like, as soon as that happened, now we've got all these DEI cohorts. It was just a lot. So we had the emerging leaders. So we had a young gentleman who had just graduated from college, and he had dreads. They were neat, they were fine. To me, it looked great. Obviously, I don't have that problem. I don't know anything about dreads, obviously, but but they came to me. And I think that I say this because we can't expect change tomorrow, but we have to acknowledge when our companies are at least making an effort to see, right? So going back to that story, they messaged me and said, "Hey, JT, do you know so-and-so?" And I said, "No, I haven't had the opportunity to meet him yet. What's the problem?" They said, "Well, there's been a couple people talking around the office about his hair and blah, blah, blah. How do you think we should handle that?" Right? So we had a whole meeting. At the end of the day, he still has his hair, but I acknowledged the fact that they came to me first, right? I felt like they truly cared. So we had to acknowledge the small steps. It's not something that they will change tomorrow, but I think acknowledging the small steps and working with them. And like I said, being your true authentic self and opening up and talk to them about, our culture. Our culture is important. If we don't talk about our culture will go away, right? And that's important. So we have to make sure that we remain relevant, and we don't just say, "Hey, you have to cut your hair because corporate said so." No, let's have a conversation. He's not cutting his hair because this means something to him, right? And then we start having those conversations. And we also, again, it's got to be twofold. We also have to acknowledge when these corporations are saying, "Okay, we'll work with you. We want to know more about the culture." And that's the opportunity to be your true authentic self. And then like Ryan said, don't hold back. That's when you come in and you're Black and you express it and you love it and you own it and you move on from there.
Wow, this is really, really great. So what I'm hearing is that there's a level of advocacy, or there's a couple of level of advocacy, right? You have this interpersonal advocacy, you have civic, engagement that functions as an advocacy. And I think that when we talk about mentoring, and specifically with Black male youth, like seeing other Black men advocate in all of these different arenas has to be moving the culture forward. And so what I hear you all saying is, make steps, make strides, and keep the momentum going, and advocate in all of these different ways, or in ways that you are gifted to advocate. And I think that we will see change, hopefully, right? I just want to thank you all. We're coming down, and so I'm going to pass it to Sarah. It's 9:55, but I just want to thank you all. I don't know if anyone noticed the way that I was grinning, but JT is my brother, my little brother. And so I'm just really proud of him and proud of the work that all of these men are doing. And really thank you for your time. And Sarah, you can go ahead and jump in here with the poll.
Real quick, can I say one thing before you throw it over to Sarah?
Sure.
To your point, Nick, the other piece of being able to challenge this is my challenge to every non-Black person on the call. Some of this shouldn't be us. Some of this shouldn't be the Black person in the company having to push this. You are here, you are on this call. As Brother JT said, we will acknowledge your first step. Now from here, and it's not to say that you aren't already doing it, but if you aren't, it's okay. Now from here, you need to now be the person in your organization pushing these policies, pushing this change, having these conversations, holding these people accountable, because we tend in all races to listen to each other, to listen to the folks who we are most comfortable with. So that would be my challenge in that space is don't leave it just up to the Black person in your organization to do that. It is squarely on your shoulders as well. And then there was another question that just came in the chat around Black gay men or Black straight men mentoring Black gay children, which is another conversation that could be an entirely different webinar that we have. But to your point, look up one of my fraternity brothers, George Johnson, who wrote the book All Boys Aren't Blue. And that would be a good start, I think, in sort of telling some of that story. But that's a interesting space that we're also exploring now within the fatherhood work that we're doing. How are we making sure that we are supporting all fathers? How are we making sure that we're supporting all children in the work that we're doing, and especially here at the school? So that's an awesome question. I wish we had more time to speak on it. And David Olter, what fraternity? The only fraternity that there is, Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. It's the only one that there is. But that's the.
I just wanted to add one last thing as well, and I'll make it quick. So we also, one thing we haven't really discussed is having youth basically lead a lot of these discussions, having them be the champion, having them champion for your organization or your program. So basically having youth at the center of a lot of these conversations. Let them tell you what they want. I think as adults, we always, we think we know what's best for our young people, but they'll tell you exactly what they want. If they want more Black mentors, they'll tell you, hey, we need to get more Black mentors into this school, in this program, in this organization, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. And I apologize, my video is off for internet stability reasons, but thank you, Ryan, Robert, and JT, and just really packing in some of those insights in the last couple of minutes here. I think what we can take away from this is that this is the beginning of this conversation. It's not the end. There's clearly so much to talk about, and we will continue to kind of bring this to the forefront and then continue to invite to you all, and then so many other names were mentioned today too, and bringing as many people into the space to continue these conversations as possible. So just in the last couple of minutes here, I am going to drop a quick survey in the chat just to let us know how the session was, what you want to talk about in the future. We do look at this, and that helps us figure out what topics to put in our poll that I'm about to launch, where we pick what you all want to do, what you all want to talk about in the future coffee hours that we do. So I'm going to launch the poll to pick our October topic right now. So we have a few different options. Hopefully you're seeing those on your screen right now. Do you want to talk about culturally relevant mentoring for Latinx youth, innovations in mentoring, looking at the connection between mentoring and cognitive behavioral therapy? Or it's going to be STEM month in October, so thinking about incorporating STEAM into mentoring programs, and vice versa, incorporating mentoring into STEAM programs. So those are kind of the topics based on some of the feedback we've received from previous surveys to talk about for next month. So give folks a few more seconds here. It is 10 a.m. So I respect everyone's time. If you have to jump, we appreciate you this morning. And a big thank you again to our speakers for this conversation. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here and share the results. So we had culturally relevant mentoring for Latinx youth. So that is our winning topic for next month. And that's what we'll be talking about in October. So we look forward to seeing all of you there. We hope you have a great rest of your September.
Yes, thank you everybody for coming. Have a good one. And thank you to our panelists.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much.
us.
Thank you.